5 expensive sewing tools that are worth investing. I've had these tools for several years now and they are worth every single cent. Starting with the sewing desk lamp. This is the sewing item that I get asked the most about, and honestly I totally understand because this lamp is perfection. So it is very wide and it's as wide as my sewing machine, meaning it lights up the entire sewing space very well. It has the adjustable height, so I can either lower it or make it higher depending on what I'm sewing. But the best feature for me is that this lamp has 2200 luminum. This means that this lamp is enough to lit up a medium size room. Now when all of this light is concentrated to one space right here, it makes everything so clear it feels like I'm sewing in the operating room. Now this lamp costs over $100. This is probably the most expensive sewing item I have aside from my sewing machines, but for me it's definitely worth it because I live in a climate where we have long dark winters where it gets dark very early, and for me having a very well lit up sewing space is essential. Otherwise my eyes start hurting because you know how it is sewing in a badly lit space. So if you're looking for a lamp for your sewing space, pay extra attention to the amount of luminums it has, because the more luminum it has, the better lit up space. Now the second sewing item that is worth investing is the variety of interfacings. Now I know this is technically not a sewing tool, and maybe fusible interfacing is not that expensive as well, but I do have a very big variety at home and I always keep quite a huge amount of interfacing because I constantly need it. Now, before investing into my stock of interfacing that I have at home, I used to buy for every project a tiny amount of fusible interfacing, and this didn't really work out that well for me because I sometimes need a tiny piece for the project and I end up not having that particular interfacing. So I always now keep about 8 to 10 different types of fusible interfacing at home in larger quantities. So I like to use the reinforced fusible interfacing strap whenever I'm installing zippers. It stabilizes the fabric, protects it from stretching out, and makes installing zippers so much easier. This is why I have a few rolls of this tape. I also like to have the stretch fusible interfacing because it helps me stabilize knit fabrics and helps them sew better and get a longer lasting results. And of course I have a variety of different weight and reinforcements of fusible interfacing for woven fabrics, because if you're sewing a lightweight dress you would use a different weight of fusible interfacing, and if you're sewing a coat you would use a completely different type and weight of fusible interfacing. And all of those fusible interfacings I have in 2 colors at least, in black, gray or white. So I use white fusible interfacing for bright color fabrics because sometimes they're sheer fabrics and they can be a little bit see-through. And if you have white fabric, lightweight white fabric, and you put black interfacing underneath it, it might darken the fabric and it might be visible on the right side of the garment. And also vice versa, if you put white fusible interfacing underneath dark fabric, it might brighten up the fabric, or it might be also visible from the right side of the fabric. This is why I think it's worth investing in having a selection of different fusible interfacings at home, and for me it's one of the best investments that I have ever done. If you're enjoying the video so far, I would appreciate if you would hit the like button so that the video gets recommended to more viewers and more viewers can discover these fantastic sewing tools. Thank you, and let's continue with our video. So the third tool that is worth investing is the steam iron. So when I first enrolled into sewing school 7 years ago, the very first week I bought 2 things. One was serger and second was steam iron. Once you tried sewing with steam iron and pressing with steam iron, it's very hard to go back to the standard iron. Now, of course, there are workarounds, and if you don't have a steam iron, you can use a damp cloth and a standard iron. This is the method that I used for many years, and it works. However, the steam iron gives a lot of steam and makes the process so much faster and so much more smooth. Another thing that I like about my particular steam iron is that I can keep it on for entire day. Even at sewing school, we would turn it on at 8 in the morning and turn it off at 9 in the evening when we were closing the sewing school. So this is a very big benefit for me because I keep going to the sewing machine and going to the iron and pressing, and I do this multiple times whenever I'm sewing. So for me, having that possibility to keep the iron always going is very good. Now, I have to admit, the iron that I'm using, the steam iron, I bought it 7 years ago. It still works well, and I paid 78 euros for it. So it's definitely very cheap steam iron, and I think this company no longer even makes steam irons, but mine works well. And this is cheap steam iron because usually they cost 200 euros or more. But if you can find the one that is a cheaper one like mine, I think that it's definitely worth investing. Fourth sewing item that is worth investing is the quality learning resources. I'm one of those people who truly believe that nowadays you can learn anything online for free. However, I noticed that whenever I spend a little bit of money on buying the learning materials, quality learning materials, I ended up using them so much and referring to them back and forth all the time, and they're just so worth it for me. So one example is when I started going to sewing school, which of course was requiring, investments from money-wise and time-wise, especially time-wise. I made more progress within the first month than it took me like 2 years to learn on my own, because really the resources were just so jam-packed, and I was learning from my teacher, and she was just pouring so much valuable information that is very difficult to find online at this high level. Another example is this pattern book that I bought a few years back. This is the most expensive book I have. At the time I paid 90 euros, I think, for this book. So it's definitely an investment, but the amount of value, the amount of quality information I got from this book, that was worth every cent. And yes, you can find that information online, but online there are so many resources, and you know that some are good, some are bad, some are good, but they are not really in depth. So having a quality learning resources for me saves time and in the long run money, because I'm able to make my garments faster, better and easier than just trying to always figure it out online. Now, I know this is not an experience for everyone, so I cannot talk for everyone, but for me, investing in these resources is definitely worth it. Extra tip, let's not forget that we still have libraries, and libraries very often do carry these sewing resources, sewing books, so make sure to check your local library and see what selection they have that you can use for free. Fifth and final tool that is worth investing is the presser feet. Now, presser feet can be expensive, especially for this sewing machine right here, because every single presser foot costs from 5 euros and up, and it can cost like 15 euros for a single presser foot. So it's definitely an investment. However, I always recommend having an invisible zipper foot, a side zipper foot, a sided zipper foot. For this machine, you need to have 2 of those, for the left side and for the right side. I also recommend having a Teflon foot because it does make easier sewing fabrics like leather or a bit more difficult fabrics. Now, on my domestic sewing machine, I bought a presser foot set from Amazon that was 32 presser feet for the price of $20. That is fantastic price because each presser foot cost like less than $1. Now, of course, you probably won't be using all of those 32 presser feet, but my personal favorite ones are the gathering foot, the piping foot, the Teflon foot, the top stitching foot, the narrow hem foot. So presser feet definitely makes the process of sewing so much more easy and more automatic, and you can create seams faster and sometimes even better. So for me personally, it is definitely worth investing too. I will link all these tools I talked today down in the description box, and if you like this video, I think you will also like learning about the cheap sewing tools that I recommend. This is the video that you can watch next. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!